if I allow life to show me what it is that I'm good at or what it is that like I'm passionate about and not try to force what I should be doing in the moment, it's amazing what kind of comes out of that organic power. And that only happens when you have the ability to think laterally because you're open-minded and you're pursuing things and traveling and being a person who's living a life out of intention. So it's all about intention and being able to think laterally and creatively. That reinforces the point you're talking about, which is why you just got to go out and try it, right? You just have to do, the things that you want to do and figure out a way to make it happen.
Welcome to The Path to Wealth, the show about well-being, fulfillment, and financial freedom. And I'm your host, Hennche. Welcome back to The Path to Wealth. I'm your host, Hennche. Today we're honored to have Derek, founder and CEO of Elevate Equity, joining us. Derek is an accomplished entrepreneur, author of Part-Time Real Estate Investing for Full-Time Professionals, and host of the podcast 3 Degrees of Freedom. With a project management and engineering background, Derek retired from his full-time job in 2021 to pursue real estate investing. He manages the Elevate Equity Investment Fund, empowering busy professionals to invest in real estate. Join us as Derek shares his journey and insights of achieving financial freedom. And he's actually joining us from Japan, which speaks to the freedom that you were able to create for your family. So thank you for making the time, basically in the middle of the night.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here, and it's a pleasure to serve.
Yeah, so let's get into it. Like, how did you create the freedom for yourself to be in Japan right now for a couple of months just because you like to be there?
Yeah. So, I really wish that I could say that it was something that we had planned straight out from the get-go. I mean, it's always been a plan of ours to be able to achieve financial freedom and get there. But to be honest, what we talk about on our podcast and what we're fervent believers in is that you should be looking to achieve any degree of freedom that you can. And, I borrow the term from engineering we call degrees of freedom because, if you have like, an object on a 2-dimensional plane that has 2 degrees of freedom, it can move around in 2D, right? And then as soon as you open up the 3rd dimension of freedom, now you have it moving in space. And then the 4th degree is time and, so on. I don't want to get too much into that. But to borrow those terms, what ended up happening for us was in the middle of COVID, I was working a full-time job and living in the San Francisco Bay Area. And at the time, we had built up some passive income with our portfolio, and it wasn't enough to cover our living expenses. And we were needing to spend at least like $10,000, $11,000, $12,000 a month just to live in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I think you probably are familiar with how much it takes to live life, in the New York area where you're located as well. So I think you can understand that. And so what ended up happening was during COVID, we became locationally independent and was able to travel while holding my full-time job. And we came into an epiphany where, on top of all this mindset work that we're doing with our performance coaches, and my wife is an entrepreneur as well. So we came to the conclusion that it turns out you can do a lot of living in the United States for less than $5,000 in a month or a passive income level at the time, and do it very comfortably throughout any part of the United States. And so what ended up happening was first we pursued that location freedom for just us because we like to travel and, we had the ability to do so. So once we realized that oh my gosh, we can live off of $4,000, $5,000 a month and have it, all of our passive income pay pretty much for all of our living expenses, we started doing that. And I still had a full-time job. We continued to build our portfolio for a couple of months, half a year. And then it made sense for me to leave my full-time job because we were full-time traveling. Then at that point, we sold our primary residence and we transferred all of that money into an apartment building, right? And into joint ventures across the country, and started converting even our house equity that we had into basically, full-time mailbox money is what it was, right? And so long story short, we've been doing this for about 2 years now, and all we have, my wife and I, is our car and 6 pieces of luggage where we can take any of our stuff with us anywhere, and wherever our Airbnb or wherever our long-term or short-term rental is, that's what we call home. And so we just love this lifestyle. We probably won't be doing it for forever, but this is something we've always wanted to do. And the freedom that thinking about it in 3 degrees, which is location freedom first, then time freedom second, then financial, you may be able to knock out a few of those if you pursue one level first. And
Yeah.
getting location freedom first is like halfway of what most people would do when they become financially free. So why not try previewing that right now? In some way or fashion. So we encourage people to start thinking about like getting yourself into a remote job situation, or being able to build a side business so that you can become financially independent quicker, or some combination of those, right? So we want people to think about not just financial freedom as the way to go, but layers, location freedom first, then time freedom, and then financial freedom, or whatever way makes sense for you. So hopefully
I
that
like
gives a
that.
little bit of a background.
Yeah, I actually like that a lot, and I think you're right when it's for location, for example. Like, why do people live in major metro areas that are damn expensive? Whether it's in California or here in New York, it's
Yeah.
because of the opportunity. It's because the income is a certain way there, maybe, and then there's other components, maybe culture. But I think during COVID, especially when everything that was cultural was shut down anyway, there was really like, okay, why do we live in a tiny box? Just here, the quality of life is rather poor for the what you get for your money. So that's, I think, when a lot of people were like, okay, maybe there is something else out there and I can move. And I think that you're making a good point that that's probably the first step most people want to take, because if you can work remotely, maybe you can live closer to your family, or maybe you can live closer to paradise, wherever paradise is for you. It might be on a mountain or on a beach, or it might be a small town somewhere that you simply enjoy for other features. So I think it's a very good point. And I think a lot of people woke up to that, which is probably why a lot of people don't want to go back to office too.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's true. The whole point is exactly what you said, is that you want to try these things out because, honestly, like we've been traveling for 2 years and we've seen so many different places. And now that we've seen all of them, there's always more places to go, right? But like now we feel more focused and energized, and we've like filled our bucket list. Like we've done things that like we're living our lives right now and not waiting until we retire later on, because
Yeah.
honestly, like life is push and pull, right? Like in life, you want to do stuff that you enjoy and then work hard and then go back and forth, right? Like that's just the way that life works. You don't want to like save all of your enjoyment for the end of your life. That's miserable, because then, once you do all of that and you think that you've achieved what you want to achieve, you start getting bored, right? And then so I just really encourage people to sample life right now, and do the best that you can. Don't be irresponsible. Obviously, put yourself in a good position, but start enjoying what you have in front of you right now, because you never know where life is going to take you. And by doing this and living out the dreams that you wanted to live, you are rewarding yourself for getting yourself in this position in the first place. And that subconsciously like programs in your brain that it's worthwhile for you to make sacrifices to work hard, right? Because you're going to get rewarded just like you are living in the moment you are right now. So I just thought I would add that, because it's a very, very good statement to try things out as soon as you can. If you always wanted to go somewhere, try it. If you thought you wanted to live there and retire there, well, then go there for 3 weeks or go there for a month, right?
Yeah.
Maybe with your job, just to see what it's like. Don't just say, oh, I'm going to get there when I retire. Try it right
Yeah.
now to make sure that that's what you actually want to do before you make plans to go there.
Also, I think sometimes people overestimate the cost of what it would take. Like when I came to New York, I had a very, very low income, but I was still able to travel at the end of the year for multiple weeks every year. And part of that was simply because I asked my boss for unpaid vacation, which he was willing to give, which nobody else asked for. And the other one was that I was somewhat frugal throughout the year. So I didn't buy coffees at Starbucks. I didn't have any subscription services. The only thing I had was kind of my cell phone, which maybe sounds boring to other people, but I was just somewhat frugal throughout the year. And this allowed me to have like a 1 month travel in every year and go to like South America or Central America or something and have that experience. And then my coworkers were like, how are you doing that? And I'm like, it's actually, if you're a little bit flexible on the dates, flights get cheaper. If you're a little bit creative around stays get cheaper. So I don't think when people hear us talking about that, these are not like $10,000 monthly budgets for these kind of travels necessarily. this also can be done on a different budget, so you can start experiencing it. And I think once you experiencing, as you said, you're like, oh wow, this is maybe not my cup of tea. Maybe I don't want to do that again, or maybe I don't want to do it again on a budget, or maybe I want to do it in this way. But I think once you start experiencing, and the way I usually frame that in my head, I usually know what I don't know before I know what I know. And like I usually come closer to what I want by saying no to this is not it, this is not it. And you know, part of that way of path for me is I need to have experiences, you know, in order to make the difference and actually know, hey, this is for me, this is not for me. So I like the way you put that. And I think people should be open-minded and explore the avenues of making things happen, because oftentimes it can be done for a better budget than one might assume. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
People think that flying private is super expensive, and it is relatively expensive, but it's not as crazy expensive as you might think if you just, for example, hire a flight for an hour or two, and or you can get an empty leg. And so there's all these different options of becoming creative.
Yeah, you know, I really like that a lot. And you know, being creative and looking for options, I think that there's a mindset that comes with that. And the mindset is it's like it's mental push-ups for your brain. It's thinking
Yeah.
in lateral ways that you're not used to. And just being able to do that and becoming flexible, like understanding that you're going with the flow. That's one of the few things that like we've really taken away that's been hammered into our personality now over the last couple of years is I used to be a person that was very much like forcing things to happen, right? Like I had a will, I had a determination, I had a goal that I wanted to set, and I just executed on that, right? Like no matter how long it took me and how much effort it took, right? But now these days, I still have that tool in my tool belt, but now I'm more flexible and able to go with the flow. And I can't tell you how much my life has changed because of that. Because if I allow life to show me what it is that I'm good at or what it is that like I'm passionate about and not try to force what I should be doing in the moment, it's amazing what kind of comes out of that organic power. And
Yeah.
that only happens when you have the ability to think laterally because you're open-minded and you're pursuing things and traveling and being a person who's living a life out of intention. Because when you're traveling and you're trying to do a business or a job on the side, your life becomes more intentional because you've got to work the hours that you got to work, and then you have to play the hours that you're going to play, right? Otherwise, you might as well
Yeah.
just sit at home, right, and work, right? Like sit, you know, what's the point? So it's all about intention and being able to think laterally and creatively that reinforces the point you're talking about, which is why you just got to go out and try it, right? You just have to do, you know, the things that you want to do and figure out a way to make it happen. So
Yeah.
there you go.
There's a couple different things in here that I want to unpack. One is, I'm wondering, did the quality of the outcomes change when you changed your approach to being more open? Because I have that same tool in my toolbox where I can just be like forcefully doing something. But now, like having some experience with that, I noticed that the quality of outcomes just changed for the better, on at least in my experience, that if I don't force it too much, like obviously you can just set that goal and you can force it, but there's something about the process and the outcome that's very different than if you actually just intuitively tune into what is being offered by life, maybe. Yeah, basically the question is, did you feel like the quality of the outcome changed for you? Because that was kind of my experience, that once I stopped forcing things
Mhm.
with just brute force, and I actually am like more in flow with what's going on and trying to be open as you framed it, I felt like overall also the quality of the outcome changed and it was beneficial for
Yeah.
everybody involved.
Yeah, I think I did find that to be true. And I think you know, in all actuality, the quality of the outcome does increase in terms of the value to you and the value to others, because I think that when you let some of this stuff go, your mind has a chance to relax, because I tend to like worry about things when I was brute force. Like I was using all of my subconscious energy on a problem that really led to a solution, or really a problem that maybe didn't even need to be a problem, right? Or I started worrying about things that were small, like thinking about, you know, how to prevent things, for like spending extra money, right? Or, you know, preventing an outcome to happen way before it needed to even be considered, right? Like some things like that, I would stress
Yeah.
myself out about it. And what that did was that freed me up to be able to be more creative and think about different ways, right? I guess the best analogy to make, and this is also assisted because of my wife, like she's also my superpower. Without her, I wouldn't be, open to traveling, and this whole thing wouldn't have even started in real estate, right? But she helped me realize that if we wanted to put a hole in a wall for some reason, you have a couple of options, right? You could use your head and pound your head against the wall like repeatedly until you make a hole in it, or you can use the right tool for the job, right? You can get a
Yeah.
hammer and you can just smash it, right? So that's what I liken to all of this, is that when you're working from a place where you're not creative and you're not open-minded, you're using a specific tool set that's very narrow, and you're proverbially slamming your head against the wall, and you're going to get there, you get progress, but there's just so much pain and time that it takes, that's just unnecessary, right? There's other ways to go about fixing a problem. And there's so many analogies this works for, like for hiring a virtual assistant, right? Making the small sacrifices for that, or making a large investment, right? Or making the leap into buying your first rental property, things like that, that you can do it the hard way and the long way, but you'll just eventually learn. And there's no competition. It takes time. Everyone has to learn their own lessons. But I think it's just important that, that people use the right tool for the job, and make sure that the mindset that you are bringing to the table is the right mindset, the mindset that's expansive and open and honest, really, with who you are as a person.
Yeah. You did say another thing too, is that you kind of have to understand that when you go to a place, you still got to do the work, but you also got to be playful. And I wonder kind of how do you have the balance there to be dialed in as to where you are, but also as where to you want to move the needle in terms of work?
Yeah, excellent question. So this is something that we've learned over, a couple of, like, the first year or so. We were fine tuning the system, and then we eventually kind of like have perfected it now. But what we strive to do is we want to do our whole workday in a matter of 3 hours on a normal day. So that means that whenever we start working, we have 3 hours for focus time, and then another hour or two for us to have consult time, which means that's when our Calendly is open for people to book with us, right?
Yeah.
So really what it does is living by the calendar is super important. Making sure that you drop everything into your time block stuff, like even if you're going on a trip somewhere, and having a Calendly or a scheduling system that's reading that, so that it's easier for you to block time out for yourself if you're going somewhere, right? But
Yeah.
generally, it's being very strict with what you do in the day. You start early in the morning or late at night, whatever your time zone you're in, and you stick to that routine every single day, and you do the work that you're going to do within that block. And when you're done with that work in that block, you're done. It's over. You have to stick with that. And it's really, like, even though in the beginning it was really tough for me to close the laptop because I had so much work to do, I found out that over time the important things get done, and the things that are not that important end up dropping off the table, or you can start delegating them to an assistant, right? And whatever
Yeah.
you can fit into that over a long period of time, like, life just changes because the prioritized things that need to get done. And then you are doing self-care. You're taking care of your own psyche and mentality, so that you're more creative when you start back up and work again. To answer your question fully, it is using Calendly and electronic tools, so that people can't book your time automatically, and you just have to be
Yeah.
strict about when you start, when you stop, just because there is a balance. As soon as you start like exceeding those hours, or working before the hours or after the hours, it's going to start trimming your sleep away, and then the quality of your work and the quality of your play is going to start diminishing over time if you don't stick to those rules and boundaries. So those are the kind of the main things. And then the reason I'm talking about this is it's from a time freedom perspective. That's our second degree of freedom.
Yeah.
And so we're really big about automations and setting things up so that apps talk to each other, and having SOPs and processes for our virtual assistants, so that way, whenever we do something, there's a Loom video, it gets recorded, automatically transferred, and turned into like an SOP. And then that ends up going into our library and used later on for templates. So we're very big into systems That's just part of my engineering mindset, and using AI as well to help us with decision making, and copywriting and stuff like that, that would be hard for a virtual assistant to do in my stead, and in my voice. So those are kind of some tips of what we've been doing, and the whole landscape's been changing over time because AI is like evolving every minute, and it's
Yeah.
adding more and more tools to our tool belt, which has been really great.
Yeah. I mean, that's a whole nother topic. Like when I started podcasting, the transcription was like paid by the minute, and now it's just like a generic tool. Like, and now you have tools that take the entire transcription and turn it into different posts and media things, and now
Yeah,
there's a bot where you can interact with the episode and just ask questions. I'm like, hey, what is the
yeah,
best statement in the episode? What did Derek say here, or what is this? And I'm like every week I just get blown away by the tools that are being unleashed on us. I'm like, it's getting insane what you can do with like a single individual kind of directing these tools. I'm like, hey, do this, give me this kind of information, narrate this in
yeah.
this way. It's very impressive.
Yeah, it's been super helpful. And being able to use those tools effectively means that us as entrepreneurs, we become true creators, in the sense we become more artists than technicians. And I think that's where the real talent is like, not doing the right work, but it's or doing the work right. I mean, it's doing the right work, not doing the work right.
Yeah.
So it's more about like finding which way to go. And I think that as time goes on, the AI is going to allow that to happen in just incredible ways, and we're already seeing it with presentations and courses that we're designing right now. Podcasting has completely changed. You're totally right, and so I think all these time saving things are making it easier for people to do businesses.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing from you is you're focusing on high leverage tasks because you're forced by making choices, because you force yourself to be time constrained. So constrained in that regard helps. And I think actually that's a general thing. Like a startup that's constrained by money has to make tough choices. A startup that's flushed with money, just wastes money and maybe doesn't learn the lessons that a constrained one. And I think the same what I'm hearing with you. You forcefully said like, this is the schedule, this is where the stuff has to get done. And obviously in order to move the needle for everything you want to do is you have to get like the 20% done that move 80% of the needle. And the more you focus on high leverage work, whether it's allocating capital or implementing SOPs or automations, and on top you also have assistants that you leverage their time. So you're slowly building a stack of leverage that works in your favor to create multiple levels of freedom.
That's absolutely right. And I think having these things, I mean, look, it's great to have people to help stand in for you to make decisions, but we as the operators of our business understand what needs to happen from a day-to-day point of view. And I think that it's important to rely on staff to help make creative decisions, but all of the administrative work should be done by systems and processes and things that you've set up beforehand. Being proactive in setting up these tools in a task management software like Asana, which integrates into all these other things, we just have automations everywhere. And we're really proud of what we've done because this allows our assistants to work in the creative space also, so that they're also creators alongside of us, and they're acting truly like full employees and people that we want to push the envelope and come up with ideas, right? So that's what happens when you start using some of these tech tools. You get the advantages of building this time freedom on top of the location freedom that hopefully you're able to enable for yourself. And once you have your time freedom and you have location freedom, you're pretty close to living the life that you would live if you were quote unquote retired. And so that's really kind of like how we've approached all of this, is making sure that you start stacking these layers on top of each other, and really thinking about things in a systematic way to build them, so that you can create more freedom for yourself.
I love that. How did you decide to hone in on certain tools? I think, and we're seeing that again, maybe with AI. There's like waves and waves of software and integrations, and sometimes I guess I get a little bit like irritated because you try to find the best tool for the job, and I feel like by the time I understand the tool, either they push an update and the tool is suddenly different, or they evolve, or they get sucked up by a larger tech company and it gets incorporated into a different tool. And I'm like, okay, So how do you usually go around that? Because I think I'm not even that old, and I'm already getting frustrated around that. So I could see there's a whole generation of people who are like kind of frustrated around these kind of technology advancements because they happen so fast that they can't wrap their head around it.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that we haven't run into that problem too much because the tools that we're using are pretty robust. Although we are thinking about changing, and that is real. That is a real big hassle. And I think that by selecting the right tool from the beginning that serves the job that you're looking to do. Like for instance, right now we're using Asana, but we're planning on moving everything over into Notion because Notion has a little bit more functionality. It integrates more fully with like our personal stuff, and makes it easier for us to take notes and incorporate other businesses and stuff like that. And so that's going to be a huge effort. We know that. It's just going
Yep.
to have to be another project to do. So if you're looking at like, spending the least amount of money, that's one consideration. But then the time it takes to switch gears, that's another thing too. But I do think that it's worth looking at every year on the internal processes and just biting the bullet and doing it. I don't think there's really a way around it. And honestly, the way I look at it is I look at it as a project that no matter what we do, it has to be an upgrade to what we already have. So
Yeah.
an upgrade meaning it's going to save more time, or it's going to combine other tools together, or it's going to have a price reduction for us. So it's going to be a cost savings. And usually it's got to incorporate two of those types of things for it to make sense.
Yeah.
And so the way to kind of bound all of that is to look at like, okay, if there's some new tool out there, that's great. Just watch it, because there may be some competitors out there that also do some other stuff that is similar. And I think that it's worth looking at and researching, but not jumping right away until it's very clear what the benefits are, and then investing the time and energy to go ahead and switch over into a new tool.
Yeah,
So that's
especially
kind of
if
my thought.
especially if there's an entire migration that needs to happen between data and
Yes.
you know
Although I would say, like some tools out there, like Zapier, for instance, makes it very easy for you to export stuff. Like, so for instance, if we wanted to move from Asana to Notion, that actually is very easy to do. With all the data that we have, it's just a simple export and then an import, right? Like you can export the
Yep.
data from Asana, but then, we have to train our staff, we have to train people like where things are. And that will take like a week or to a month or maybe even multiple months to get everyone on board with that, and that takes effort. So it's just the timing of it, and making sure that like the actual transition is clean and smooth and thought out, because the more it drags on, the more your processes and confusion and frustration is going to spread, and you don't want that when you're moving into a new system. You want things to be easy, efficient, and clean.
Yeah. I think it's definitely a process, and the larger your team, the more kind of legacy issues you will have, I guess. So I think there's something to be said to keeping things lean and clean and trying to work with the best tools that kind of evolve by themselves so that you don't have to change and migrate. So there's just like in real estate, when you choose a property, when you choose a market, have all of those different components. If you choose your tech stack, you also have to make sure like, hey, what is the outlook of this company? That because if you sign up for a product, you're also kind of investing your time and your money into like, okay, where are they going to take this? Where is this going to evolve? Like especially many of the smaller tools, I like to take on small tools that come from unestablished companies because they might not even be there in 18 months. They might not have good customer service because they're just getting
Yeah.
started and they're a startup and they're bootstrapping. And that's, I think, where legacy software players have a little bit of a benefit because you at least
Mm.
know 3 years down the road, they most likely will be around, and if they don't manage it fine, somebody will probably buy them and the product will last and there's customer service and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So kind of bringing it back, how do you handle your operations from overseas? Like,
Mm.
you mentioned the systems and everything, and you,
Hmm.
you mentioned that you put it on a calendar. But how do you feel integrated into, for example, the properties and whereas? And I'm speaking from my personal experience. When I'm overseas, I find it a lot harder to mentally get myself into that place. Like what is going on in Texas when I'm sitting in Frankfurt is it's just harder to
Yeah.
wrap my head around.
Yeah, that's good. I think again, I think that the habit and the cadence is really important. Like for instance, when we meet with our team, we do it on a consistent day. Like we meet every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Here in Japan at 9 in the morning, which is, in the Philippines, that's 8 a.m. for them. When
Yeah.
we're in the States, it's like 3 p.m. Central, or no, it's like 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. Central. And so we just make sure to adjust that meeting time, so that it's the work time, like it's in the middle of the day for them. That's the most important thing, is that they're
Yeah.
working in the part of the day that they want to work in, because they're more effective and efficient. And I'll do what I can, because it's not their fault I'm traveling. I still want them to be efficient, and I have to move my day around to make sure that I'm meeting them in the middle where it makes sense for me in my day. And then I'll kind of plan the rest of my hours around that,
Yeah.
because I want to start my day working to get ready to start delegating some stuff. And then I have some delegation, and I have a little bit of plan time after that. And then I have my, my calendars open for appointments, basically after that. So
Yeah.
I would say that while, it does suck while you're trying to be in a new place, right? To enjoy the area that you're in. The reality is that you have a business, you have commitments, and there are things that you still have to put your time into until you can fully step away from your business and put someone in beside you. But honestly, the type of people that we are and the type of people that listen to this podcast will do that for about a year or two before they start getting stir crazy and need to start another business. Usually that's the way that it works. So we just are people that like to work over time. So what I would do, and we've done this before, is we'll block out like either an entire week out of the month where there's no calls, no appointments, just the VA calls to keep things moving on their end, just to make sure that they're still moving and
Yeah.
have what they need. Or we'll block out like Tuesday and Thursday. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday are our VA days, and then Tuesday and Thursday is no work. And so you can use that if you really need a break, if you need to slow things down or speed things up. And that's really intuitive. And you have that privilege and that right because you have your own business, right? Hopefully. But if you're working for someone else, then I mean, you can take vacation time or something, but you have to pace yourself and just understand that if you're feeling too drowned by work, sticking to your time blocks, and knowing like what your limit is, start putting controls in there, right? Like start slowing things down if you're starting to feel demotivated or overworked, right? Or stressed out, or increase your work day at one day at a time, right? But don't start making your entire week turning into an entire work day. Like that won't work. But I think that being disciplined and sticking with a certain frame every single day that you can, every single work day, is going to be the best yielding results for you, even if it's painful and you think that some high priority things are not getting done. They're actually low priority things because there's other high priority things that is taking up your time that needs to get done. So I just would encourage you to lean into that and just have a trust, that would happen.
Yeah. I think it makes a lot of sense to dissect upfront, like, hey, what are the high leverage tasks? What needs to go in there? But then also, hey, can I really go with this cadence? Does this make sense? Is this something that works for the business as well as myself? And I think in the early stage of being on the entrepreneurial journey, we just want to make it happen. And again, the brute force comes probably in, and we are willing to
Yeah.
take any call at any time of the day. And it's like whatever it takes. But that's also in itself not a sustainable journey. And I've seen actually many business people or people that got extremely wealthy, they spend like 1-2 decades accumulating the wealth and being like all out, and they don't care too much for their diet, and they don't care for their physique and anything. And then like maybe in the late 50s 60s they're trying to fix that, and they're like, okay, now I need to get back on my health journey because otherwise this life will be rather short.
Yes. Yeah, that's it's so important to be in balance, right? And I'm very fortunate because my wife is a doctor and she is a naturopathic physician, so she's always telling me don't eat that, or if you do this, this is the consequences over time. And
Yeah.
that's the other piece that's really important, is the health. Yes, I completely agree, but there's the mental health to it too. Like you've got to make sure that whatever it is that you're engaging in, it's sustainable long term. I'm not telling you to not work hard. Like that's definitely not the message here. But you got to make sure that your self-care is prioritized and you're taking care of fulfilling what it is that you want to do with your life while you're building a life of your dreams, right? Like everything is connected. And you can't just say, oh, I'm going to work really hard for 3 or 4 years and then eventually I'll get to live the life that I want to live. No, it doesn't work that way. You got to start living the life that you want to live right now while working the work that you want to work right now. That's just how it goes. And I found that is really, the most successful combination in life, to be the most fulfilled and to be able to sustain the pace that you're trying to build your things at. And as soon as you can do that, you're in for a great adventure and just a fulfilled, wonderful life.
I like that. I like that. So Derek, what are some of the goals on your horizon? Where are you and your wife planning to take this journey together?
Yeah, we like traveling. We'll probably end up doing traveling for another couple of years. But in the meantime, while we have all of our properties that are pretty close to stabilization right now, and we'll probably do a few more acquisitions, I want to start helping my wife's business to get her automated and get her stuff up and running. So, her virtual practice is seamless and she's getting leads and basically has a business that can run between her and her team without having to do extra effort for marketing, right? And a bunch of stuff like that. So what I see myself doing is trying to help people get more time freedom on top of the financial, because the financial freedom is great. Like I got people, that I can reach out to for real estate and investing, and I already have a brand and a platform for that. But I really want to build something to help people use AI to leverage time freedom, because time freedom is very popular with people. People want time free, they're okay with their full-time jobs. They just want time freedom. They don't care about travel, right? And I think time freedom is super important. It's like kind of an art form. And so I feel like, getting the real estate portfolio running, and so I have a great team in place and we're making great decisions on the executive level, then building more of a specific value-added business to help people recover some of their time, and building systems to help them think about, how to be more efficient with their efforts every day, and building processes to help leverage it through other people, through virtual assistants and other means like that. So I think I'm passionate about those 3 degrees of freedom, and I just want to help everyone get 3 degrees of freedom, whichever one they want first. We want to be the first people that they think about when it comes to creating those degrees.
Yeah, I like that. So where can people connect with you, find out more, about the different degrees of freedom?
Yes. So the easiest thing to do is just to listen to our podcast, which is the 3 Degrees of Freedom podcast. And then for those listeners out there who are interested in learning more about how to determine where you are in your 3 degrees adventure, we have an ebook that you can go to. It's elevateequity.org/podcast gift. And you can just go there, and it's an interactive PDF that you can download that will help you determine where you are in your journey compared to where we were when we left our jobs, when I left my job. So it'll help you figure out how much equity you have in knowledge equity, relationship equity, financial, all kinds of things. And so it'll really help you determine where you are and when you should start investing, if at all.
Yeah, I like it a lot. Derek, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for, sharing all those completely different aspects on how to gain a different degree of freedom that is beyond just the finances, but actually also making sure that you leverage systems and automations and other people's effort to gain time freedom. So yeah, thank you so much for making the time and sharing all of that on the path to wealth.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate it, hon. It's great to talk with you here.
Thank you for joining us at the Path to Wealth. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Check out our upcoming guests and be sure to share it with all your friends and family that want to take their life to the next level of wealth.